the fact that you do not have all the luxuries that you should have, the question will still be, what would a reasonable doctor in your situation do at that particular point in time? And even with the lower standard we have in the country now, some doctors, quite a lot of them, are still erring with respect to not meeting the requisite standard. We call it the locality rule. So, if a doctor is negligent, how do we measure? We just call, if the doctor works in the Sherry, or if the doctor went to UI, we call his pair, who works in Baga, who went to University of Ibadan, or Luth, for example. I say, okay, what would you do at this particular point in time? The same doctor, the same level of experience, the same locality, the same institution. You're not going to go to Johns Hopkins to go and call a professor of a specialist. You're going to call his pair and you ask him simple questions. Would you treat a 65-year-old diabetic, 65-year-old obese patient without testing for diabetes? And little mistakes like that, you find that such things still happen here. So you just bring the standard down for them and ask their peers, what would you do in this situation? And yet again, we should measure that and identify that there are allegations and actual...
But it's a two-way street as well. Negligence, you also have to look at the patients and families, what they have also suffered when a doctor or a nurse is negligent in his or professional conduct.
Yeah, there's what we call contributory negligence. Even at times, the patients contribute to the negligence. So they ask you, when you meet a doctor, they ask you for history. They ask you questions, and they ask you, have you ever been pregnant before? I know you've never been, but they ask you, pregnant before, and you say, no, I've never been pregnant before, just because probably you have a new spouse. Or they ask you, oh, do you take alcohol? And you say, no, I've never drank before, probably because you came in presence of your Catholic priest. Things like that. So automatically, what have you done? You sent the practitioner on the wrong curve. You sent him on a voyage of discovery. You understand? So you could actually contribute that to yourself as well. Be that as it may, I believe that the only way out of this situation we find ourselves in, and as we speak now, errors are happening, is for us to develop capacity of our professionals. We need to develop their capacity. There's at the Medical and Dental Council, what happens there as well is they call it continuous professional development, which means that you're supposed to update yourself. Even though you finished from medical school in 1975, you are expected to update yourself as during every year at least have 20 points of medical education to renew and refresh in your mind. And of course, there are also now developments in medical practice that you need to update yourself with. So there's a lot of responsibility on practitioners to update themselves. And the irony for me, as a stakeholder in the industry, is that it's a bottom-top approach. First of all, the people running the hospitals really don't know. Secondly, again, we are pushing medical students out of medical schools with very little exposure or knowledge of medical laws.
I'm very interested in the very first part that you raised, talking about how doctors, essentially people in the medical field, are considered essential services. And you talked about how you look at them as soldiers, same way you look at firefighters and what have you. And you talked about how also oftentimes it would seem that the real agitation for the betterment of the health sector is clouded by demand for wages, remuneration. So how would you say, in your opinion, considering the effect that sometimes this has on the generality of the health sector, how would you say that doctors separate the issues in such a way that they get listened to one at a time?
Well, I think the first thing first is that they should be listened to. At times they sound like broken records because over and over again they keep rehashing the same issues. Maybe now that Minister of Health happened to have a very strong reputation of a unionist in the past, maybe now some of these issues might be handled. But at the same time as well, I honestly believe that you should try as much as possible to divorce issues. Yes, we know, they have to make a living, but essentially by the time they lump salaries and wages with need for equipment and all that, you find out that by the time the salaries are being settled with, the issues of the environment really is, and unfortunately, the management and owners of hospitals, particularly the government, are being short-sighted because now the patients are starting to sue and they're going to start suing management boards of hospitals. You will now find out that and it's already happening Some hospitals I have on record, at least some hospitals in Nigeria now would have, government hospitals in Nigeria now would have, in the past 4 years, at least spent about 300 million settling patients of allocations to malpractices. One paid 100 million, one paid 50 million, some others pay, and so they are already being compelled to settle. So why would you keep settling patients that you've killed in your hospitals by virtue of lack of amenities? So it's important that they invest, not only in paying salaries, but you need to invest in equipment. And by the time you do an audit, you find out that, really speaking, Nigerian doctors are indeed supermen and women.
Considering the fact that, these people are considered essential services, would you continue to advocate strikes as a way to pass home their message?
Unfortunately, fortunately, they are right. National Health Act actually says they have a right to strike. What the law expects from them is to give notice before they go on strike. And I think that's why they keep making noise, and that's why they come on air, you shout to the high heavens that we are going on strike so that they can comply with the requirements of the law with respect to that. Unfortunately, it really shouldn't be so. Strike should not even be should be the last resort. And it should be something that by the time it happens, it should be once every 10 years. But now that we find it virtually almost every other quarter, we're going on strike in Nigeria. And it's going to get to a point as well now that patients will start suing hospitals. Because I come to your hospital, I come to your hospital for treatment. In between my treatment, they are telling me to leave. You understand? Because resident doctors or nurses or pharmacists are going on strike. No. So I can actually institute an action against the hospital management board, because now they've endangered me. They put my life in danger because I have come to your hospital. You opened your doors wide open for me, telling me you have the facilities, you have the manpower, you have the expertise to treat my ailment, right? In between that, you now tell me you're going on strike. I didn't bargain for that.
All right, let's get your impression on this. That part of the Health Act that people say they're going to be harvesting organs of people. You heard about that. What do you think of it?
I'm very honest with you. I was very happy when I read Femi Falana's SAN's note of warning, and I was happy about it. Not because I agree with his postulation, totally disagree with it, but I was happy that finally people are paying attention to medical law. Falana's opinion is that the law allows doctors to remove patients' organs without their consent. I due respect, I do not agree with him. He looked at the law, due respect, from only the National Health Act. So we looked at Section 48 and Section 51. Section 48 talks about removing, you can remove an organ or blood or tissue from a patient with his consent, or you actually have a right to waive the patient's consent in emergency. All over the world, medical legal protocols are there. Situations of emergencies, we remove consent. Now what happens is this. The law talked about for the patient. So if I'm coming to a hospital and I'm unconscious, and you need to take my blood, or you need to do a biopsy on me, and I'm not conscious, and the doctor sees that it's an emergency situation, which means that there is imminent threat to loss of life or limb, the doctor has every right to go in and examine. So he can actually extract my blood, he can actually take out tissue, but it didn't talk about transplantation. That was where Femi Falana got it wrong. If you look at Section 52 of that particular act, it talks about the only persons who can participate in transplantations are medical practitioners. Who is a medical practitioner? Somebody under the regulation of Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. Now, Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria has what we call Code of Medical Ethics, which is the law guiding their practice. And the Code of Medical Ethics provides consent protocols for removal of organs or treatment of patients with respect to consent.
All right.
So Femi Falana didn't really get it right there. But I'm happy at least some notable Nigerian contributed to attention to medical law.
All right, Olaolu Osanyin, a medical lawyer, thank you very much indeed, and that's where we'll have to anchor today.
Thanks for having me.
And that's the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
Thank you. I'm Maokwe Ogun.
Many thanks. I'm Sulaiman. Let us see you again.